Okay, so we got Prop 16 here. Instant no. This is probably the most important bill that we need to reject on the ballot this year. Prop 16. Vote no on Prop 16. I'm going to get into the details in just a second. Before we get into the details, I'm just going to insert a quick clip from the news about this article, this proposition. And then I'm going to insert another clip from Thomas Sowell on the negative impacts that this bill had when it was implemented decades ago. So why we're going backwards and implementing this bill again is beyond me. It's crazy.
There's so much controversy with this. There's pros and cons to affirmative action because it diversifies the workplace, your university, your schools, whatnot. But some of the people who argue against it suggest that, well, it kind of takes away some of the value that you yourself have applied to your profession, your job, your school, whatever the case. But now, because you're brown, black, whatever, it's because of your skin color that you got that job, because you got that position, not because of your skill. And it's
That's
just
an interesting take.
It's interesting, yeah. So I don't know how I feel completely about it, being a person of the minority group.
Restoring affirmative action in California would mean government agencies and academic institutions can hire workers or admit students based on race, ethnicity, sex, or national origin. The Senate Labor, Employment, and Retirement Committee voted 4-1 Wednesday to send the bill to the next committee before a final floor vote. The measure, named ACA 5, ultimately brings the issue to voters to determine whether California should reinstate affirmative action. More than 100 opponents called into Wednesday's hearing, many from the Asian Pacific Islander community.
The nation is in the midst of a global pandemic as well as a social upheaval. In the coming weeks, many mistakes will be made, mistakes that will be regretted further down the road. Don't let this be one of them. Keep discrimination illegal.
But the bill has been at the top of the Legislative Black Caucus's priority list. Support for the measure grows as the national conversation on racial justice continues.
What do you blame for that? You're not blaming middle-class blacks who are beneficiaries of affirmative action, are you?
I'm blaming the incentives created by affirmative action, because when it comes to the incentives that are created, the businessman is going to try to protect himself whatever way he can, and that means hiring those blacks who are overqualified, who have a long track record, and so on. And that's what all the data show, that the more, for example, black couples where the husband and wife are both college educated now make more money than white couples where the husband and wife are both educated. But the black female-headed family has lost real income in absolute terms over the past several years and has fallen further behind white female-headed families. So the very opposite trends are going on at the same time. And you can't argue this because of blackness or racism, because both of them are black people. One group is shooting way ahead, one is falling further and further behind. And a large part of that reason, I believe, and the data seem to suggest, is because the incentives created by affirmative action and similar kinds of programs just make it too dangerous to take a chance.
Okay, so now that we're back, I'm going to read the title of the proposition, and then I'm going to read the summary, and then we're going to go through the fine print as to why we should not support this bill. So the title of Proposition 16 is that it allows diversity as a factor in public employment, education, and contracting decisions. The summary reads as, permits government decision-making policies to consider race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in order to address diversity by repealing constitutional provision prohibiting such policies. Instant no, because we already have from the 60s the Civil Rights Act, and from the 70s, the Equal Rights Amendment. So there's no need for this because it's already illegal. Everything you can think of, it's already illegal to discriminate against people based on race, sex, color, all that stuff. Okay, so now the fine print here. It permits government decision-making policies to consider race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin to address diversity by repealing Article 1 of Section 31 of the California Constitution, which was added by Proposition 209 in 1996, which back in 1996, they added that to end the discrimination. Basically, this proposition is written as if it's going to allow more diversity. But what it's doing is it's going to allow employers, public schools, all these different sections to discriminate against other certain people in order to like balance things out in their view. And it's like, okay, you can't really balance things out in your view by discriminating against other people. Specifically, Asians, Pacific Islanders, and Indians too are going to be discriminated against more in favor of people like me, like black and brown community. What they say, it's to help the black and brown community. I guess I would fall under the category of like brown. Like people would look at me and like, you fall under the brown person category. And it's like, I don't need you to add discrimination laws against other people to help me out. It's fucked up. It's okay. So let's get into the background of this. The state and federal constitutions provide all people equal protection, which generally means that people in similar situations are treated similarly under the law. So this is the background of the Article 1, Section 31. In 1996, voters banned consideration of race, sex, color, ethnicity, and national origin in public programs. In 1996, California voters approved Proposition 209, adding a section to the state constitution, Section 31 of Article 1. The new section generally banned the consideration of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in public employment, public education, and public contracting in California. There are some exceptions to Proposition 209. The state and local entities can consider sex when it is necessary as part of normal operations. For example, the state can consider the sex of an employee when staffing specific jobs at state prisons where it is necessary for staff and inmates to be the same sex, to prevent rape and stuff like that. Additionally, the state and local entities may consider specified characteristics when it is required to receive federal funding. For example, the state is required to set goals for the portion of contracts awarded to certain groups for federal-funded transportation projects like businesses owned by women and people of color. Proposition 209 affected certain public policies and programs. Before Proposition 209, state and local entities had policies and programs intended to increase opportunities and representation for people who faced inequalities as a result of their race, sex, color, ethnicity, and national origin. These types of programs are often called affirmative action programs. For example, some of the state's public universities consider race and ethnicity as factors when making admissions decisions and offered programs to support the academic achievement for those students, which has been an issue recently for Harvard. They've been discriminating against Asian students, raising the standards for them to get admitted because Asians do have a culture of taking education more seriously. So they do get admitted at a higher rate because they take education more seriously. So they're going to get admitted more because they're educated more. So by raising the standards against Asian students, they're trying to help also by lowering the standards for brown and black communities to make it easier for them to get in. So it's like, because you have studied and you have worked hard for this, we need to help the other people who may not have put in the same work by lowering their standards and raising yours. Crazy, right? It's just, it probably sounds dumb when you put it that way, but that's how they're doing it. It's like, what are you doing? State and local entities had employment and recruiting policies intended to increase the hiring of people of color and women. The state also established programs to increase the participation of women-owned and minority-owned businesses in public contracts. The state set goals for the portion of state contracts that were allowed for those types of businesses. The voters approved Proposition 209. These policies and programs discontinued or modified unless they qualified for one of those exceptions. Federal law allows policies and programs that consider certain characteristics within limits. Before Proposition 209, state and local policies and programs that considered race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin still had to comply with federal law. Federal law establishes a right to equal protection and, as a result, limits the use for these considerations. For example, under the federal law, universities may consider these characteristics as one of several factors when making admissions decisions in an effort to make their campuses more diverse. That's the thing I was just talking about with the Asians and stuff. To ensure compliance with federal law, these policies and programs must meet certain conditions that limit the consideration of these characteristics. These considerations are intended to prevent discrimination that violates equal protection. State law also has a number of anti-discrimination provisions that are similar to those in federal law. So that pretty much sums up a lot of the fine print in this proposition. Also, I wanted to read for you guys the Constitution from the Constitution of California. Section 31 of Article 1 in the Declaration of Rights. A. The state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or a national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. I'm going to link to, in the video, I'll link to the Section 31, Article 1. Hopefully this doesn't get repealed, because then this will be removed and you won't be able to read it. But that's what they're going to remove. If you vote yes, they will remove that. Basically, you vote yes, it means that you can hire based on race, based on sex, based on any of these little immutable characteristics. It's just crazy. It's such a backwards way of thinking. I remember hearing about this earlier in the year, and I was like, oh, that's crazy. I didn't think it was going to pass, but it did, and now it's on the ballot. So make sure you vote no on Prop 16. Instant no. This is crazy. Also, as far as like public schools and stuff like that, I just wanted to add a couple things. There's certain things, especially when it comes to immutable characteristics, things about us that are different that we are not in control of. Just because we are different doesn't mean that we should be treated differently, but also just because we are different doesn't mean that we have to make it every single aspect of your personality. Your personality is your personality. These immutable characteristics have nothing to do with you. Certain things about you had no control of when you were born, like what color you were, what sex you are, who you're attracted to. You have no control over those things. Those things just are the way they are. So I just wanted to recommend a couple things. Since public education has not produced an educated public, I thought I would help you guys educate yourselves by providing some sources that might actually help you increase your artillery of information. This book, Color, Communism, and Common Sense by Manning Johnson, written in the 60s, I believe. Basically, the Communist Party took advantage of the black community, using them to advance their agenda. So it's a good read. Color, Communism, and Common Sense by Manning Johnson. Dude was pretty sharp. Actually, it's pretty sharp looking dude too. You look at this guy, and you're just like, damn, what a handsome looking guy. The other book I wanted to recommend is The End of Gender by Dr. Deborah. So I'm about halfway through the book right now, but it is pretty good as far as learning about biology and the differences between biology and gender and how they are linked and in ways they are not linked. Deborah So, she's a neuroscientist. She studied sex, biological sex, and actual sexual orientation through fMRIs and stuff like that. And basically, she was kicked out of academia for acknowledging the binary of the sexes, which is crazy. So, it's a lot. I'm sorry. This video is way too long. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Vote no on Prop 16. Let's not add discrimination to the factors of public employment, contracting, and education. I'll see you guys in the next video.